But I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to work with all of you. Thank you.
Perfect. With us again, we also have our local enriching team, and they are also YouthMappers alumni and regional ambassadors. Eric Tamba. Eric, you're here, say hi. Okay, I think Eric is having a few glitches. Raya, I think she's about to join us, so she'll be joining us and she'll be sharing a bit within the chat. Please interact, but use the chat box. You're welcome. We also have from the USAID contributors, our USAID team, who are, I believe, about to join us. They wish to say and share with the team. So we have Rory, who is the YouthMappers Activity Manager, Christine, the Geospatial Data Scientist, and Adele. I don't believe they're here yet, but once they join, they'll probably be able to share.
Rory and Christine are here.
Oh, Christine, you're here? Say hi.
Sorry, I'm here, and I think Rory's here, so he'll be able to give a broader introduction, but thanks everybody for coming.
Yep. Hey, everyone. Rory here. I'm the YouthMappers Activity Manager, which means I'm lucky enough to work on YouthMappers each and every single day and see all the amazing work you're doing. So please keep it up, and I'm excited to participate here. And yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Adele?
She is not here.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so going forward, just a brief background. I know we all have an understanding of what YouthMappers is, a global consortium of student-led and faculty-mentored campus-based chapters leading geospatial skills to build community resilience. We all know that we don't just build maps, we build mappers, and we've worked along with that for quite an amount of time. This is just an opportunity for us to get together and get to coordinate and have a more directional way through this project for crowdsourcing Prop ID ground truth data. We know the movement has been growing since 2015, and so far there is over 328 universities with about 12 universities from just Tanzania. So it's highly appreciated and exciting to see how your students are collaborating from the different universities in this virtual world or this digital world from over 67 countries overall. YouthMappers has very many other, does a lot of initiatives through Everywhere She Maps. And Everywhere She Maps is basically designed to ensure that women are engaged from the posts of leadership, increasing map data that is biased towards women, or increasing women's participation, and overall grow female participation in the geospatial industry. Best of 5 pillars, which is security improves, lives saved, power is generated, prosperity rises, and innovation happens. For example, we had Raya, who is Everywhere She Maps regional ambassador, and her work is dedicated to do just that, which is propel and increase female participation, will ensure that YouthMappers students get to share their opportunities through Everywhere She Maps program. So why do we have Everywhere She Maps program today is that this pilot project is under this initiative, and it's looking forward to enriching a number of core activities, which is one, promote mapping campaigns, which will, of course, enhance the skills of those that will be mapping, students that will be mapping, but also contribute to data, support chapter trainings, and develop and execute dependable approaches, which is this one. I want us to keep in mind the word pilot, that this is an experiment that we're executing and seeing how chapters can well adapt to this kind of exercises, and how they can carry them on. Professional and career development, which will also be a part of the project, which will include workshops and connecting students. And as I could say that on this platform, we're already connecting ourselves and getting to know each other. There are youth mappers and non-youth mappers, there are industry people, there's the OSM community here. So please feel free to engage because that is one of our goals. And also ensure that you take direct engagement. So as much as you're being mobilized by Eric or your chapter leader, this is also like a call that you own as equal responsibility as your chapter leader to be equally active and participate in the actions of your chapter or the work that your chapter delivers. And of course, overall women in technology leadership and fellowship, which ensures that there is gender parity in all things that we do. We ensure that we don't keep a blind eye to the participation of the female and the she from within the Everywhere She Maps chapter. So while you're there and you're engaging, please be sure to tap the arm of your female friend and encourage them to be part of this. So what is this project about? We had the title. So the Crop Identification Ground Truthing Pilot Project. We may understand that today we use or we deploy advanced technologies such as machine learning and AI to do some forecasting models of our crop cycles. And of course, that supports multiple goals in the Sustainable Development Goal Agenda. And what we know is that as much as we wish to do this on a very rapid and large scale, we also understand the diversity of local crop growing conditions. The conditions on our farms where we come from, the field sizes, the surrounding landscape, the soil type, the moisture. And of course, all these things come into play when we want to have precise forecast models with our advanced tech tools. And that means that we need to enhance and increase the amount of data that we need for us to be able to precisely do these identifications and map or make have more precise forecast models that we may need or that will give more insightful and economic value to our countries or our communities as well. So from our farms, that means that we need to increase the amount of data to support the machine learning, the training, the technological trainings that take place with these machines. So more data, more precise information. And that's, I would say, the reason why we need to, why we are piloting the projects, being able to collect sufficient ground truth data across diverse geographies. However, the question would be why YouthMappers? And I think that's the catch, is because YouthMappers is well and diverse, is very diverse and well distributed across the country. Country like Tanzania, we already have over 12 chapters. So it means that we have the privilege to participate and contribute to our own communities from our own university areas where there may be need to increase ground truth data. Also, the other catch is that YouthMappers are equipped with the preliminary skills of crowdsourced mapping, and they do this through their frequent trainings with OSM in their different chapters. So this is like an opportunity for us to execute the skills that we always carry out or we always practice in our classrooms. So the objectives of the project undertaken is, of course, make sure that we build and reinforce our capacity and be able to understand how we can apply our skills, our crowdsourcing skills to agricultural data collection, be able to develop an approach for chapters to collect this crowdsourced data. And by developing an approach, we can rewind and understand how we participate. And most of the projects that we do are just generally based on how to learn or how to map. And This time we want to focus it on agriculture data. So how can chapters ably sync themselves and make an understanding or create an alignment of how they can collect their data, agriculture data, using the tools, the same OSM tools that they practice with every single day. Like, this is an engagement for every student and every contributor for given chapter in that YouthMappers chapter community. So also connect young people to the professional industry. And also through this project is we'll get an opportunity to have a moment to share with different professionals as we go along through both the remote training and the physical engagements that will take place in the next days of our work. We'll get an opportunity to share with industry people and propel our career mindset and curiosity on what could be done or what we could use more of what we've learned. So the region of interest for this project specifically is Mwanza, Dodoma, and Arusha. And as much as we have chapters spread throughout Tanzania, Zanzibar, Dar es Salaam, Morogoro, like the different places, for the remote training, everybody is engaged, and every member from the YouthMappers community in Tanzania is welcome or is encouraged to participate. However, for the actual fieldwork engagement, that will be limited to members in chapters in those communities. So what are the project tasks? So the approach to the project, one, of course, is building capacity, making sure that we are equipped and we fully understand the tenets of this project and what we need to do, or how best we can actually work and create an excellent data set that can be used to forecast to improve the precision of machine learning. So we will engage, of course, mobilize amongst ourselves, which we are doing so excellently, and make sure that we have a coordinated mode of communication. We have routine engagements of students and our chapter leaders and our patrons, and then also get the necessary training for us to be able to define which is the best alternative for us to engage in this project, which is the specific approaches is be able to conduct a remote mapping exercise, which is through this remote training, be able to undertake PGIS-like community engagements. I know that we interact with our communities every day, but how about interacting with our communities when we're sharing information about agricultural mapping or crowdsourced mechanisms of mapping in an agricultural environment? So also undertake the actual fieldwork exercise, which will be crop survey identification from the different fields in our communities. So this is a whole lot of work that is going to take place for the next period of time, which is not so long, but I'm very sure as students, we have always taken charge and we're always excited to be a part of such engagement. So I believe that everybody is the way I am, and also be able to connect with industry people and community leaders and our fellow youth leaders in our own communities and different authorities. How exciting is that, right? So the specific tasks, of course, as I've shared, is remote training and mapping exercise. Today is our first, but we're having many others that will come. Every Saturday, we will be coming together, and every Saturday will be a new module for us to go through and remind ourselves and refresh our minds on some of the tools that need to be addressed. Field training workshop, which will take place from April 17th to April 21st. That's going to be a communication that is going to come through the different chapter communication channels or the groups that we have for engagement, on which members will qualify to attend that workshop. But I am sure it's going to have it's merit-based and it's going to be very competitive. So I welcome you to pay attention and to actively participate, and be sure not to miss out on that workshop. And also the field exercise itself and the community engagement. So not all of us will go to field, but competitively, we will have numbers of us who have made sure that we've understood all the project requirements and can go to field. Okay, so that's a bit about the project. I also going to take us through just basics of mapping and why remote mapping. So why are we using OSM in the first place? Is that we know that open mapping in general integrates technology, integrates practice of community, and also integrates the context of knowledge, how we understand and the theoretical and the theoretical knowledge out there and the contextual knowledge out there. So the engagement or the intersection, open mapping intersects these three, and in the essence that we're able to co-create data that will help us improve our knowledge and understanding of perception of place. So undertake PGIS Lite, where we'll be able to engage with our communities, which again reinforces and improves our understanding of place and the perceptions that community does have, which technology might need to learn. And also, we have an opportunity to experiment and create disruptive mechanisms of how we can do things much better, right? How can we improve the processes that were done earlier? And what innovative ways can we do that? So we get to experiment with our phones, with our laptops, with the different software, with the tools, which really sparks innovation amongst the mappers. So, and in this case, we're doing it with OSM, and I'm aware that at least the largest group of us today have a background to OSM. They have at least an OSM account, right? And they have a computer and they have internet connection. Exactly, that's why you're able to be here. You have a mouse, right? And those are the basic tools that you really need for you to start contributing with resources like reading material and reference material to be able to add data to OSM. Those are the ones that we collaboratively work around to make sure that you have enough and all your questions are sufficiently answered, and you're able to work on your skills. So we can do the mapping either through online or offline tools. Dr. Makaska's presentation is basically going to be covering the offline, semi-offline tools. And I'm just taking us through the online editing, which I am not paying attention. I'm not giving so much attention for, because this is not what we are going to be utilizing in this project. Rather, the tools that Dr. Makaska will be taking us through are the more beneficial to this project. So we need to pay critical attention then. So we can add, how do we engage with OSM? Once you have an OSM account, of course, the next thing is to add data to that account. I mean, to OpenStreetMap. And you can do that through online editing, in-browser editing, or other mechanisms. Offline editing using tools like JOSM, Potlatch, etc., as you would see. And then also using apps on our smartphones. Right. And we'll go through most of this work throughout the weeks through our communication channels and engagement platforms. So online engagement, online editing using ID editor it helps us also to identify the key features, or what you would call the principal GIS features, which is points, lines, and polygons. Of course, they have a whole lot of description or categories, but in this moment, we're focusing on the actual features that we would like to add to OSM. Points like water pumps, restaurants, parking lots, and electric poles. Lines, radar lines. I mean, every feature that we can connect with nodes and leave it open-ended can qualify to be a line. And of course, polygons, which are enclosed features or enclosed connected nodes that usually define enclosed things like buildings, parks, fields, part of what we're going to be doing in field work in this exercise. So of course, by now, everybody has an active OSM username and password, right? There are just a few steps that you can always do to sign up if you do not already have, but I know you already do have because you indicated that you did have during your registration. So it is also very important to interface with the map before you get to map, so you understand what the map layer, that we have a map layer on OSM, and this provides us with the different base layers that we can, alternate to be able to have a better background view of what we're working on. We have links to share our data. For example, you've created a specific data set and you want to do a quick share. You can have a GeoURI and then share with colleagues. You can share an image of the work you've done. There are various ways that OSM permits us to share, and we can do that also from the OSM window. You have a key which helps you to understand the very many features that are on your map. For example, if you're a beginner and beginning to interface with the OSM, using your mouse is always the best recommended mechanism of interacting with the OpenStreetMap environment, as it will help you do the zoom, do the pan in a very quick and light manner. So this is how the ID editor interface looks like. It has an edit feature panel where we are able to understand all the labels of what we are trying to do. It shows the tags and the attributes of the features within our map. If we zoomed and selected a feature, we have the tools which provide us with the editing and the saving tools. And they're just at the top they would be at the top of your interface, right? Somewhere here. We have the mapping panel, and the mapping panel shows the various configurations and functions, editing, offsetting, help, sharing, changing base layers, zoom in, pan, and etc. Those are the map, that's the map panel. Those are the features in the map panel, or the icons. And then of course the information panel, which gives you the scale at which you're working and all other contributions, right? And then of course in the top right is the save, the do and undo, which helps you to improve your work and also make sure that you save all the edits that you're working with. So editing in browser, or using ID editor can be done both in browser and using a guided task. So doing that in browser, you're able to open your internet. I included these small short demos because we don't have time. We have just a very short time, but the slides are going to be shared, or all these resources are going to be shared with students throughout the week to make sure that they're able to do the practice on the different tasks that they'll be assigned, right? So you need to log in. So you have to ensure that you are logged in and your username is visible. You have a search box where you can directly search or put the name of the place that you wish to contribute to. And then you can select add feature, and then you'll be able to edit with ID editor in browser, and you can easily add a point, you can add a line, and you can add an area. Always remember to save your work when you're doing, when you have finished mapping. And of course, part B is how you do that using a task manager. So the first incident is we're doing it in browser. The advantage, this is a good thing, but it also has disadvantages. For example, if you're doing a coordinated project like this one, that means that editing or improving contributions in browser may not be a good mechanism, because one, a lot of you might contribute to the same place, which will cause a lot of errors in the data set because multiple contributors for the same feature, right? So usually we are pushed to make a guided or coordinated methodology, which is through the task manager, to have guide on how we can best contribute, or to guide the team and avoid conflict and also maintain quality of data. So it's the same entire process, only that at this moment you have to go through the task manager. We have both the Teach OSM task manager and the HOT tasking manager. And I encourage you to utilize the links that are in this presentation to look at both these tasks and see, or engage with them and see the differences, and feel free to reach out and ask questions about the difference in all these tasks. Okay. Overall, we need to remember that it's not okay to delete other people's work. We can improve it, but it's not okay to delete that work. And as per OSM guidelines and policy, if you wish to delete somebody's work, it's always very important that you reach out to them and ask for their permission for you to be able to do that. When you make contributions to OSM, they will always display they will always include a signature, which is our OSM user credential, right? So you have access, or you can be able to have a track record of how many people are contributing and what they are contributing. And the best advice is you cannot delete their work, but with their permission, you can ask them to improve what they contributed, or you can ask them that you make those changes yourself if it does not offend them, right? So if you feel the desire to just delete something, please make sure that you only delete what you created. Do not delete what you did not create. Otherwise, it might mess up the database and it would cause a lot of challenges to the entire OSM community. So that is good to keep in mind. Also remember that the OSM interface has a help button, and that help button is always to help you revisit the functionalities of the OSM interface whenever you have a challenge. Please utilize it. Feel free to go back if you cannot find somebody close or someone immediate to answer your query. The help button is always a good place to go for you to engage with the knowledge and be able to make meaningful contribution to the OSM database. Edits are uploaded as change set, and we are always encouraged to always leave a change set comment. So for example, for the contributions or for the work that we'll be able to do after Dr. Makaska's training, we will know that we will have a hashtag, which helps us track our change sets and also inform the broader OSM community on why a certain project is being executed and by whom. So for example, we could have YouthMappers, you could add your name, hashtag your OSM username, you could add hashtag the project name, but usually the hashtags come predefined and all you can do is to just include certain additions. And then of course there are a few key components, which is find, trace, square, and tag. Always make sure that these are the rules that you use or you go by when you are editing in OSM. I would say that's much about it. And thank you so much for the audience. I'll take a moment to invite Dr. Makaska to take us through the next phase of the tools of this project.
Yeah, so Stella, why don't you pause for a moment for some questions, if there are questions from
Okay.
the audience?
So, okay.
So I think we could take a few questions for Stella, if there are any. You can put in the chat or you can unmute.
You can unmute and ask.
No questions. We'll pause again for any questions about anything, including what the project is about or the ID editor or JOSM at the end. So Stella, I will ask you to kindly take over the admission of participants because there's still a lot of people coming at this late moment. And
Yep.
also if you could just monitor the chat, because when I go to full screen mode, I am not going to be able to see it. So if you could do those two things, that would be great. I'm going to kill my camera because it will kill my bandwidth when I share my screen. Let me start our screen sharing. Many of you will have received a link, I think from Eric or Selamaris regarding screen share. I'm going to share my entire desktop. I think that's a little easier. So you will have seen a link to a presentation that starts like this, Java OpenStreetMap. This is from HOT. This is a presentation that we modified from them. If you did not receive this and you want to download it, I put the link to all the materials in the chat. I put the link directly to this PowerPoint presentation, this slideshow earlier in the chat, and then there's a link later for all of the participatory GIS material. You are welcome to download, to use that, to enhance it. All that we ask is that if you do use the material and you do present it, that you credit YouthMappers for any of the material. We try to make sure on each slide opening to let you know who were the main editors of the material. And this one is hot. And I think the words, the credit words here disappeared on this version. This is a version I share in Bangladesh. And so one of the only issues that we're facing with this material is that as people download it, they sometimes will delete it accidentally, or they'll move it, or they'll do something that we're not sure what they did. So if that happens, you can just simply send us an email. We'll refresh the Google Drive. So don't worry if it disappears. We've had that happen a couple of times, but it should be always available for you. And as I mentioned in the chat, many of the aspects of our field data collection will draw on this set of material. So the material is developed by YouthMappers. We've been visiting and doing workshops. So our first workshop was in Malawi in South Africa last September. Christine was there. I don't see Adele online, but Adele was also there. And then we went to Bangladesh and Nepal in late January and February and met with chapters there to do this workshop. So you are part of the YouthMapper network and you're more than welcome to use it, take it, learn it, and teach it. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. So part of that is this Java OpenStreetMap. This presentation is a little bit basic. We have to make the assumption that not everyone in our room has experienced Java OpenStreetMap or has installed it. We did ask ahead of time if you want to follow along with this to please have downloaded Java. You need to have Java installed on your computer before you can put in Java OpenStreetMap. But if you're not able to follow along, that's also fine. This is being recorded and Selmars will send you the link to the recording so that you can go back through at your own pace with your laptop and you can sit and you can try to do this on your own. A lot of times people will take those recordings, they'll pause it, they'll try to figure it out. So you're welcome to just listen, you're welcome to try to follow along. So we have a wide variety of computers in use with a half a dozen operating system variants in Windows, especially for Windows PCs. So sometimes there's an issue that you can't figure out. And of course you can just message us and maybe we can help. I do know that we have issues with Java OpenStreetMap on older versions of Windows. Older versions of Mac OS seem to be okay. But with some, particularly if you have anything before Windows 10, so that would be Windows 7, 8, XP, it doesn't tend to run very well. So those can be some limitations that you should be aware of. But generally, it does run pretty well. And Stella, I see there are a lot of people in the waiting room. I'm not sure if you're able to admit them. So let's go ahead here. I'm going to leave half of my screen open here for just a second. I'm not going to put this on full screen version because it'll take over everything. But in a second, I'll open up Java. So I hope that everyone can still easily see the slide deck. So Java OpenStreetMap editor is also known, we just abbreviate it as JOSM. And the advantage of JOSM is that you don't need to be connected to a live internet connection while doing your edits. And of course, I think we can all understand in environments where we don't have open and free access to the internet, many of us don't have internet in our homes because it's expensive. We might be running it off of a mobile, which is also very expensive, but can be slow. That you can understand the advantage of having a tool that you can, when you have internet, download it, download the data, make your edits, and then wait until you have access to Wi-Fi, maybe at your university or a public spot, to upload, because obviously you're not using all of your data to edit live. So what Stella presented prior to this was ID Editor, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, being in YouthMapper chapters. An ID Editor does require a live internet connection and a very good internet connection in order to work properly. So many times if you're making a quick edit or a quick change, or you have very good internet that's reliable, you can use ID Editor, but a lot of times we want to use JOSM. So data here is uploaded and downloaded by the user. So if you interface OpenStreetMap with ID Editor, you're not really doing that uploading and downloading in a deliberate way. It's just being served and you're saving it. But here we're actually going to go through and talk about how you both download the data and upload the data. Okay, so that's our brief overview. So JOSM does run on Windows, it runs on Mac OS, and it runs on Linux. So it's platform agnostic, which is very good because we can't say that about all of our GIS packages. Many of our GIS packages force us not only to a specific type of computer with a specific operating system, but they also oftentimes will force us to have to purchase very expensive computers because they have these high requirements. So the advantage of JOSM is that it runs on anything that you have, and it doesn't take a really expensive high-end computer to do that. You do, however, need a computer, and for many of us, that's a barrier. It has to have sufficient free disk space, about 10 gigabytes, and you have to have the ability to install software. You need to, before you start working with JOSM, you have to install Java 8 or greater. The latest version is always recommended to avoid security issues. And you do need an initial internet connection to download the app and the data, and then you need to have another internet connection when you're finished to re-upload it. We do recommend that you have a computer mouse. It's a little bit difficult if you're not using an external mouse, if you don't have a great trackpad. Some laptops have extremely good trackpads and you don't need a mouse. Others don't have very sensitive trackpads. And that's just a recommendation because you can certainly get along without it, but it's a little bit easier if you have an external mouse, we found. So this is the steps. I've left these in here because we redistributed these slide decks to everybody who wants it, anyone who wants it. So many of you will have already done this, but if you haven't, we leave those instructions in so that you can do it on your own, maybe with the recording. So we give you the location there of the URL for Java OpenStreetMap. You have to know whether you have a Windows laptop or a Mac laptop, and most of you are able to do that, although I've had some people who weren't sure which was which. The Mac laptops always have an Apple on the front, so you can easily tell which one is which. You download that, you let it go to your downloads folder, you find it from your downloads folder. Then you have to make sure that you have Java, and if you need Java, this is the website that you see there under .1 to get Java and to install it. And you're going to want to actually install Java before you install JOSM, right? So you want to make sure that you have Java. It'll say download, and then you'll want to install. And again, that's where you need to make sure you have administrator privileges. Sometimes if you're using a laptop or a desktop at your university, and you're doing this in a university lab, oftentimes you do not have those privileges to install apps. So just keep that in mind. So once you've downloaded both of them, you'll need to install them. In bold here, again, just reiterating, Java needs to be installed before JOSM. If you do it the other way around, it won't work. Or it will cause you issues every time you try to launch JOSM. So Java needs to be installed before JOSM. And then there are the instructions, pretty straightforward. If you're using Windows PC, which in Bangladesh most of the students were, so I changed this to .exe. If you're using Mac, it's .dmg. But if you have those laptops, you've installed apps before, so you just go ahead and install them. So once everything is installed, you can open JOSM. So I'm going to do that now on my computer. And it looks like this, if you're watching. And it should pop up here. There we go. A little bit. Let's get Zoom out of the way. There we go. Okay, so it looks like this. It will say something, something, something. There's always sort of a news update. What is very helpful about this page is if you look at the screen cap on the left, it will tell you when you should update JOSM. And you really should try to stay with the latest version. They have bug fixes, they have security fixes. So if you open JOSM and you get the you should update with a link to click, you should do that. The other reason that you want to stay updated is a lot of our training materials are updated for the latest versions. It's not so frequently that buttons change, but there are some other screen caps in our presentations that might be newer than what you have, so you might not have it perfectly aligned. Normally, that's not a problem. It's mostly the bug fixes and security updates rather than the user interface that you want to stay updated. If there's no text in the box, it's also okay. It'll just say news. Don't worry what it looks like, but that's the open. So just to go through some of the navigation in JOSM. So there are a couple of elements of the user interface that we want to look through. The main menu bar. Sorry, Zoom keeps popping up these admit messages. So the main menu bar. If you have a Windows operating system, your menu bar will be below. It will be in the app below the header bar. If you have Mac, as you see with mine, it puts it up here in the Mac system tray. So you can, the functions are exactly the same. The lists are exactly the same. It's just in a slightly different place. You have shortcut toolbars, information panels will pop up on the right. You have the map view, which is this main screen, and then you have editing tools along the left. So it's a pretty simple layout. Once you start to use it, it becomes second nature as to where things are. But it can take you some time if you're a new user to figure out where exactly those are. So basic navigation. So some basic ideas. And this is where sometimes when you're using a trackpad, if you don't have a sophisticated trackpad, this is a little bit difficult because sometimes with some trackpads, it doesn't do particularly. I've seen laptops that don't do the right mouse button very easily. So if you don't have a trackpad that has a good right mouse setting, this is where it can get you a little bit tripped up, and a mouse is better. So if you do have a good trackpad that does a good right mouse button setting, you're okay. Because to drag the map, you use that right mouse button, whatever it is, you click and hold. To edit or manipulate an element in Java, you use the left mouse button, and then to zoom in or out, you can use your scroll wheel on your mouse or the plus and minus buttons on the keyboard. Again, if you have a good trackpad, I don't use a mouse because my trackpad, I just go up and down with my two fingers and it scrolls really, really easily. But not all trackpads do that. Okay, so you have to figure out your own configuration as to your needs. So there are three main modes of operation when editing in JOSM, and we'll go through all of these live so that you can see it live in the Java OpenStreetMap editor. But we've blown up these buttons so that you can see exactly which one to use. Until you get used to where they are, you might have to search for them and make sure you learn where they are. So select is there to select elements, to view and edit their tags, and to move them. That is different from adding. I see this happen a lot where people have chosen add and then they get a bunch of nodes that they're not realizing they're in add mode rather than select mode. So adding actually creates elements. You can create nodes, ways, extend existing ways, but you're actually adding the data as you see it. And then delete is for deleting elements. Now, Stella had mentioned that it is not very good OSM protocol to delete other people's edits. So we were doing this live, I think somewhere just recently, and someone was really petrified to use the delete button. When you're using JOSM, though, it's okay to use the delete button because it's your data that you're creating and you're deleting it from JOSM. You have not yet uploaded it to OpenStreetMap. So it's okay. If you make a mistake in JOSM, go ahead and delete it and then save it. If you go back and you find that it's still not correct, you can still delete it and still save it. When you work in JOSM, you have not yet deleted, you're not yet deleting other people's work until it's final. So if you do download data and there's a lot of elements in it already, you don't want to delete anything that someone else has done. The other thing to know is if you accidentally delete that in JOSM, which I've had students do before, where they have downloaded data, there is data from other people in the JOSM window, and they accidentally delete it and then they panic. I say don't panic, just don't save it and then re-download a new, just re-download it anew and start again. So if you delete a bunch of data that's other people's and then you upload it, yes, you'll be deleting things. So don't panic right away with that delete button. It can be fixed before you upload. So OSM has an interesting set of terms that it uses, which do not always equate with what we are taught in our GIS courses. So GIS courses use nodes, lines, and polygons for the basic elements, basic map elements. For what I'm told are good reasons, OSM decided not, in its early days, not to use those terms. They use something called nodes, ways, and closed ways or areas. But roughly that corresponds to nodes, lines, and polygons. So one of the things that you'll learn is that a lot of times people will use these two terms interchangeably when they're creating edits in JOSM or in ID editor. So don't be alarmed if you see or hear somebody say something like lines and something like polygons, because it's really hard to change your terminology along the way. That confused some students, and they ask, which is the correct one? And they're both correct. So nodes are dots used to mark a specific location or for drawing segments between locations. They're literally just a point in space with a latitude and longitude coordinate. A way or a line is an ordered list of nodes displayed as connected by line segments, describing roads, paths, rivers, anything that's linear. And then closed way or area, what we call polygons in GIS, is anything that encloses an area, parks, lakes, islands, buildings. So that's our basic terminology. So you can watch the screen and you'll see that these will animate. So you go to the line button or the add button, excuse me, and you can create a node by just simply clicking. I got a little ahead of myself there. You can go to the add button. You can create a line, double clicking to complete. And we can do the same thing with a polygon or an area. We can create, and then if we close it by joining to the first node, we create an area or a polygon. So it's very straightforward. We're just using the add button there. And again, we'll do this all live so that you can see it. So those are our three elements: nodes, ways, and closed ways, points, lines, and polygons. Very important, extremely important. So important that if you don't do it, it won't work. So OSM does not work with layers like a typical GIS works with layers. So in a GIS app, it separates the types of elements or the types of map items into layers that are alike. So it creates, and you can choose how you do this, but the relationship between the different items is based on where it lives in the layer. OSM doesn't do this because it's completely web-based. And that's technologically very challenging to do on a web and also make it editable and downloadable. So it works with attribute tables, works with tags, not layers or attribute tables. So importantly, each tag consists of a key and a value. So you get to start to learn, and many of you have done OSM training, so I won't belabor this, but you have to have these tags. So you'd have a building that's residential, a key and a value. A highway, that's primary, that's a key and a value. And an amenity, key, school, value. So this, everything that you create has to have this tag. If it doesn't have this tag, we end up with crazy looking things that we can't identify. So if you don't put the tags on there, you get a blank map because OSM can't read what you've created without a tag. So it literally just doesn't create anything. You're not telling OSM's database what the element is that you've just created. So if you do that and you can experiment and do it, you'll see it doesn't show up. And so I'll have students who are editing in JOSM, they forget to do the tagging and they say, I know I created this. And I said, we go back and say, did you actually put the tag in? And that's usually the problem if what you've created, just created, doesn't show up. So you can immediately begin to see with this example why it's so important to tag, because you can have this line and you have no idea what it actually represents. Are you drawing a road, a river, a railroad, a boundary? So this helps to prevent confusion as to what your geographic element that you've added is. So we do this by adding the select tool, and we're going to go through this in just a second when I get out of the demo and into the live. The live for JOSM is a little tricky when we're remote, so I'm going to save some of the live demoing to the end so that we can get through all the concepts first. But if you have a question, certainly put it in the chat, and Stella will stop me when there's a question. So we can use the select tool. We can add tags. We select the object. We get the pop-up that says add a tag. And you can see there, it says please select a key and choose a value. And then this is where you do need to start to learn the syntax. You'll need to learn what a building, we don't call it buildings, plural, we call it building. And we can see what the values are in the database. Now, these are often set by local. Some of these tagging protocols are set by local OSM user groups. And so you have to check with what the local protocol is as well, because it varies by geographic location, because obviously things change throughout the world. And there are some elements in some places that aren't in others. So you have to start looking through and saying, getting yourself familiar with what is the key and what is the value that you want to use. So here's our first live step. I don't think this is going to work for me because I think I've used this Java on this computer before, so it should work. But I'll go through the steps and show you how to do this. So the first thing that you have to do before you start doing any editing in JOSM is you actually have to go in and authorize this version of JOSM to use your OpenStreetMap account. So I know that most of you have OpenStreetMap usernames and passwords. This is where you go. You have to panic if you remember your password and your username. Many of us don't. So This is why doing this live remotely is a little bit easier, because you can go back and play this again once you've found your username and password. But I'll show you here live how to do that. So we go to edit. Oops, sorry, it's getting in the way again. Preferences. This is where the Mac interface looks a little bit different than the Windows interface. So you go to connection settings, and you'll see it here. On the left for Windows. So you'll go there and you'll say you'll see that the box pops up and says you do not have an access token yet. To access the OSM server using OAuth, please authorize first. When you click that button, it will then pop up, and I will try to find this button here. For some reason, it makes it really tiny, and I can never see the authorized button. So let me find it real quick. Yeah, here we go. So you can see I'm already authorized because this is my this is my authorization. But it's very simple. You'll click that authorize now button. You'll enter your username and your password. You'll say authorize, and it will allow it. If you completely delete if you completely delete JOSM from your laptop, you may need to reauthorize. If you're using a public computer, like in your computer lab, I see this happen a lot. It might not be authorized for you. It might be authorized for the last user, or it may wipe the authorization when you log out of the computer, and then JOSM won't work. Always make sure that you have authorized, especially on a public computer. Yeah, so you'll say authorize now, accept access token, click OK, and you will be authorized. And what that will do is we'll use your OSM username and password to go and access data. So then again, you have to do a second set, is to set up remote control. So you're going to go to edit and preferences. Oh, I hope this is remote control. I think it is. Oh no, I can never see these little buttons that they give, so I have to go through them. So remote control is here somewhere. I can't remember which one it is. So I have to always scroll through this. Can't remember. Remote control. There it is. There we go. So then you say enable remote control, and you can change these. I don't normally change them. I let them to what I had used when I set this up, and then you just say okay, and it goes away, and you can enable remote control that way. Okay, so those are the two things you need to do before you start. So let me pause for a second before I get to this bit and ask if there are any questions. Are there any questions? How do we update JOSM? By opening it. And if there's an update needed, so this is Brenda has asked in the chat, let me go over here. When you open Java, if you need to update, it will tell you, and you just click the link and re-download the app. It will detect if you need an update. At what conditions JOSM can be used? What do you mean by conditions, Severino? You just have to have your laptop powered up and download whatever you're going to work on before you go offline. Okay, others? Okay, others? So Rory says, I mentioned local rules for tagging features. Will I find that on the OSM wiki? Indeed, you would, Rory. You would find that on the OSM wiki. Your local rules should have, if you go to that, you should be able to find them. Does that mean that every locality has its own wiki with its own rules? No, there are often places that don't have those. So you would follow the general guidelines through OSM. And if somebody wanted to drop those links into the chat, that would be super helpful. The minimum qualities of a device to be used, it has to have one of the, so this is Stuart's question here. You have to have Windows operating system, Mac operating system, or Linux operating system. To my knowledge, maybe Rory or Christine or Stella knows, I don't think you can run JOSM on a tablet. I have an Android tablet and an Apple tablet, and I can't run it on either of those because you have to run Java. So the minimum qualities would be the 10 gigs of space, and the laptop has to be able to run Java 8, which if you go to the Java website here, it shows you what, if this says you don't have something that it needs, so it's usually disk space or memory or operating system. Those are the three things that Java needs. Then it's going to kick back and say you can't run Java. So you have to go, and if your laptop, again, if you're using Windows 7 or 8, it's likely going to kick back because those do not have, they generally don't have the security features needed to run Java. I've had a couple of people with Windows 7 and 8 laptops just recently who could not run it. That's not all versions because there are like 90 million different versions of Windows. Some people have it uploaded and some people have it updated and it works, and others it doesn't. So you have to try it. You have to try to see if you can download Java. If Java installs, you're pretty much good to go. JOSM will as well. Thank you, Rory, for putting in those OpenStreetMap links. I highly recommend that you click on those links and you bookmark them.
Yes,
Stella.
Frontend has their hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Frontend.
We're not hearing the question. Maybe you can put it in the chat window.
Yeah.
Anybody else? But again, Rory has inserted the wiki links for both Tanzania and East Africa. Again, highly, highly recommended. If you don't know these exist and you're editing an OSM, you really need to go to those before you do any more edits in OSM, either with ID Editor or JOSM. You really need to make sure that you're following the guidelines for your local governing body, right? Any other questions with that? Just going to pause for one more minute. Stella, how am I on time? I'm almost finished. I just want to know how much I can show them in the live.
Yes, you still have time.
How much?
About 20 minutes.
Okay, so Chad's presenting next. So Chad, I'm not going to need 20 minutes. So if you want to prep yourself. Okay, no questions. So this is where it gets fun because we do these live. And just because I'm in the US with rather better internet doesn't always mean it's going to work. So I've done this live many times from this very computer and had issues. So let's see if it works. And that's not just JOSM, that's anything. So let's see what we do. So ideally what we want to do is add data to OSM using JOSM. So in this portion of using JOSM, you do need to be connected to the internet. Okay, so you might want to, if you're taking notes, this is a point where you're going to say, I have to be on the internet for this. Once you've done this, though, and once you've gotten past this step, you can then go offline, do all your edits, have fun, and then make sure everything's beautiful and perfect and well tagged, and then you can upload. But this is one of those points where you do need to have access to the internet. So we go to File, and we go to Download Data. And so you can see by the language there, does anybody know where I last downloaded data? Anybody know that language? Can you see my download screen? This is an attempt to make sure we're all awake this nice Saturday afternoon and following along. Who wants to guess where that is? That location is. Anybody want to guess? Who's guessing? Hello? Give me some guesses. Aren't we all geographers here? Or friends of geography? Where's my download data coming from? Rory, let me call on somebody. Rory, do you have a guess? Christine, do you have a guess?
Is it Bangladesh?
Oh my goodness. Rory wins the geography award. It is Bangladesh. It is actually, let's see if I can zoom out. It is the city of Dhaka in Bangladesh, because there's no training there. And I have this set to use the local language, which I do not speak Bengali, but the students were using it. So I decided to keep it that way. But let's go somewhere else we may know. And again, this is where I actually am better using a trackpad than I am using a mouse. So let's go to a little place that we might know. Who knows this place? Anyone? Who knows this place? Where are we now? Is this South Africa?
Tanzania.
Yes, Stuart got it. It's Tanzania, Arusha, our northern friends in Tanzania. So what we are going to do is we are going to draw, using our mouse or a trackpad, a little pink box. Whatever you draw that is inside the box will download the data. Now, someone tell me what happens if I draw a box this big versus a box that's a bit smaller. Sorry, it's got in the way. Anybody know what's going to happen if I draw a really big box versus a very small box? Anybody see what happened? Look in the window. What is it? It's telling me something. Who sees it? Too much data. Chad. Yes. Thank you, Chad. Look at the red text. Do you see it? Download area too large will probably be rejected by the server. Okay. So a lot of times we just don't pay attention when we're clicking on a computer screen. And I have a funny story about the students in my class who just click, 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 click. You know, we all do that, right? Everybody does that. Yes, 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 accept, 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 right? You have to pay attention to these warnings when you're doing this kind of work. So in my class one time, we were creating an app, and the students had to download a lot of stuff, and they just kept saying accept, 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 and it's something I had created. So one of the boxes I put at the end of this lesson, I will hand my cell phone to the professor, and they all accepted it. So I stood at the door, and as they left, I started collecting cell phones. I said, "But you said I could have it." right? Because you said accept. Here's your accept in the app. You accepted it. So now I have your cell phone. Well, that was just to make a point, which is that you have to pay attention to these errors. The number of times I've been working with someone and they keep saying, it won't download. And I say, read the message, right? JOSM, OSM are all designed to try to be helpful to you. And so it will tell you when these areas, it will tell you and give you these warnings that can save you some time if you just read them, but you do have to read them. So let's see if this download area is still too large. Might be too large. Let's try over here. Okay, download area, okay. Size probably acceptable to server. Sorry. Let's go back to Arusha. This is a little bit glitchy when I'm using Zoom. And I knew that. So what you're seeing on the screen is not always what I'm seeing because of some Zoom lag. So download area, okay, size probably acceptable to the server. Now it says probably because if it's a very, very densely mapped area, it may kick back too much. So then what you say is download. Oh, bad request. So you see why they said the word probably? The area you tried to download is too big or your request was too large. Either request a smaller area or use an export file. Now in our other trainings, we go into what some of the other options for downloading data are. We'll skip it here just because of time, but let's go back to Tanzania. Again, sorry for the glitchiness, it's Zoom. Let's try again. I want to go out here because I need to download the area where we're actually going to have our training session, which is here. Okay, so it says download area, okay, size probably acceptable to server. Let's see if it lets us download it. Yep, see now it's letting us download that. So this is the area. Anybody know what this area is between Arusha and the Kilimanjaro airport? Who knows? Who knows what this, what is almost perfectly in the center of my screen? Geography quiz, are we awake? Anybody know? It's a long walk to freedom here. Nobody knows. Chad, do you know where I'm? Is Janet here? I thought I saw Janet on the call. Janet, do you know what this is?
It's hard to make it out. Honestly.
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? This is the Nelson Mandela Institute in Arusha. So this is just south of the small lake there. So yes, USA River, thank you. Cloud Thinkage, got that correct. That is the USA River area, right? So you can see, you can download those data that exist in OSM into JOSM, but you can't get too greedy. And you know, that's actually a good thing, because if you try to download extremely large areas, it may make your laptop slow. You may not have a good enough internet connection to re-upload everything. And so you have to be very specific and very deliberate about the area within JOSM that you choose to edit, okay? So one thing to just give a very big red flashing warning at this point is that everything that you see on your screen, where did these data come from that you see on the screen here? All of these lines and roads, and there's the institute, and there's the lake, and where does this come from? Who knows? Put it in the chat. Where did that all come from? Is it just magic? Did it come from Stella's computer? Where does it come from? All of these things that you see on the screen.
OSM server.
It comes from OSM, right? So it means that that's something that an OSM user created, right? What did Stella tell us about data that other OSM users created? What are we not supposed to do? Anybody know? Are we not supposed to what? Add? Delete. Brenda, very good. Brenda gets a star. Very good, Brenda. You're not supposed to delete it. So if you delete it in JOSM and then you upload, you in effect delete their edits. So be careful not to delete things that you download into JOSM. Only add here. Now again, I've had students panic because they accidentally deleted everything. And I just say, just don't upload it. Just quit, re-download it like we just did, and start over again. Now, you have to be very careful. So if you add a bunch of stuff, if you add a bunch of elements to your map and you're creating, let me make this a little bit larger. So you're just really busy and you're a great mapper and you're adding, but you don't hit a very important button, you could lose it all. And that is the save button here. And I I'll walk around when we're doing a JOSM project and say, I'll remind people, did you save it yet? Did you save it yet? Did you save it yet? Because this is what happens is the students don't save it, or the editors don't save it, or whomever working with don't save it, and they lose everything, okay? Because their laptop, the battery goes dead or something. So always make sure that you're downloading, that you're saving anything that you're adding to. Okay, well, how can you trace anything? Because this just looks like a blank map with just lines and there's nothing underneath to see. So what if you want to then start to trace elements and add to this map? You would need to download some imagery. And again, for this slide, you need to be connected to the internet. So here you'll go to the imagery menu, and then you can choose which type of imagery you want to use. Oftentimes, if you're working in a task, in a tasking manager, the person who created the task will give you instructions as to which imagery you should use. So if you are working in an organized task, you should look for the instructions as to which image to use. I always recommend it when I set up a task. I'll go in, I'll look and say which imagery do we want to use. And you want to try to do that so that it does not conflict, because any of you who have used the imagery either in ID Editor or JOSM before, you will know that it doesn't always line up perfectly with each other because they are sourced, those images are sourced at different points in time with different sensors at different view angles, all kinds of things. We're just going to choose Maxar Premium because it's in our training material that we wanted to use, and we say download. Now, you see mine is filling in really fast. I happen to have good internet today. This could take a minute, so don't get too anxious, especially if you're on shared Wi-Fi that's not very fast, because I've had people go through and keep re-clicking and it just crashes JOSM. But now you can see that is the imagery for this area, and then you can start zooming in and out and seeing if, I don't know, maybe you have a project and you want to, whoops, sorry, again, maybe you want to map those field boundaries, right? Well, we won't be able to put that into OSM because OSM has a problem with fields, but you could create it and then export it for something else that you're working on. Or maybe you want to map all of these trees. And again, trees, individual trees, not always the greatest to map, to upload to OSM, but you could export it from JOSM if you wanted to create that coverage. So there's a lot of different things that you can do here. Now that you have the imagery, you can look through. This is pretty well mapped. Sorry, again, glitchy with the cursor and zoom. You can identify features, and you can add. You can select. So you can select certain features. There's all sorts of different options that you have here. So Chad's going to go into a couple of the advanced editing. He's going to go a little bit more detail into this, so I'm not going to step on him on his slides too much. But when you've finished with your task, you then can go back and upload to OSM. This is where you need to make sure that you have your hashtags. When we were doing this live, I was we were walking through this and I said, don't do this because we didn't want to make those changes for novice. We had a lot of people who hadn't used Java or used JOSM, so we didn't want them to upload it. But you'll see that you have to provide a brief comment for the changes that you made. This is where you're going to put in some very, very, very important hashtags. I'll say it again. Very, 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 very important hashtags. If you are mapping on a task and it asks you to use a hashtag, that's what you would put there. If you are working under any connection to YouthMappers, that's where you'll put the YouthMappers hashtag. You can see for this example, they've got a hot OSM hashtag, right? So who can tell me why it is important if we are working in any capacity as a youth mapper? Does anybody know why it is so important for us to put the youth mapper hashtag in that list? Can someone tell me? Does anybody know why we're so emphatic to put that youth mapper hashtag? Anybody? Shabani, it will be useful to track the youth mapper works. Absolutely, it will be useful. Not only is it useful, we have a validation hub at YouthMappers, and they will skim, get all edits made by anybody who's used the youth mapper tag and validate them. Now, why is validation important? Because we as youth mappers, as a group of people, do not want to be continuously uploading really poorly created edits, because the OSM community will get justifiably mad at us because we're creating wrong edits to OSM, which then, those data get uploaded to everything. In the US, a lot of services upload OSM data and use them as base maps. And so we're creating wrong data. So the YouthMappers Validation Hub will track those. Normally, we try to coordinate with the Validation Hub if we're going to do a big activity and let them know what our hashtags are. But if we're not putting those hashtags in, it doesn't exist. Just like I said, when we're talking about the importance of hashtags using the keys and values, it's the same thing. If you create all of this work and you're trying to make sure that your Youth Mapper chapter is known as a major contributor and a major good community member creating lots of helpful information, and you don't use your hashtag and you don't use your chapter hashtag, no one will know that it was you who did it, because they have to find your individual username. It will also, this upload window will ask you to specify the data source that you used, just so that it's clear which image source you used, because if you use a different one to validate it, then it looks wrong. So this is some of these are just very good etiquette and hygiene practices with data that we ask you to be very, very good about following. So the live edits part, it's really not anything we can do remotely, but what you can do is download this and practice on your laptop, creating those points, lines, and polygons. And then you can raise any questions that you have with us, because that's just a practice activity. So I showed you creating a point, creating a line, creating a polygon is as easy as just drawing that on the using the add button here and drawing it. I'm not going to do it to this data because I don't want to have to upload or clean it. But you practice this, right? So go into Java OpenStreetMap, practice, download something in your community, see how well your community is mapped, and then map it. If you're afraid, that's okay. Just don't upload it. Just don't do slide 24, but practice, and then you can just delete it, get rid of it, and not upload it, and practice again. And then when you feel like you're at a point with your practice, you can ask someone who's more experienced if it looks good, and then you upload it using slide 24 instructions, and you've created with JOSM. Slide 24 here, uploading to OSM. again, you're going to flag this. I need internet to do this, right? So you need internet to do the downloading on slide 22. You need internet to download the imagery on slide 23. Once you've done that, and once you've hit the save button, you just go edit your heart's desire, edit, edit, edit. When you want to upload, however, you do need to have internet again to upload that back up to the server, okay? So let me stop there, give Chad a little bit of time. There are some resources here at the end. Learn OSM, lots of really helpful tips and tricks. There are video links. There are all sorts of very low bandwidth options as well. So if you're struggling with bandwidth with internet connectivity, there's some, they tend to be very easy to download. So it's up to you to practice that and begin to learn how to add those features to OSM. So let me pause for questions and also give Chad time to get his stuff ready and ask if there are any questions.
Sure. Thanks, Brent. I'm just gonna get my slide up and then
I'm going to
yeah.
stop sharing, Chad, as soon as I see if we have a question. Are there any questions on this? Okay, I'll let you have the screen, Chad. My guess is that many of you have used JOSM. However, those of you who have used it, being part of a community, being a good community member is teaching your juniors. So I'm sure there are also many people on the call who haven't used it and are a little bit too afraid to say that they haven't used it maybe. And so maybe what you could do is with some of your seniors or people who have used it is to work with them and to watch them do that. And then you can feel more confident and you can begin to make your own changes. Okay. I don't see any questions. I will watch the chat if there are any other ones, but I'll hand over to Chad.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks, everyone. I know that was a lot to take in. So if we need to, take a minute to regroup, I did just want to talk to you a little bit about identifying features, interpreting and using satellite imagery, and like little things that you can look at in the imagery, and some tips, some tricks, some basic background of imagery, and how that will help you actually identify features in OpenStreetMap and then add them into the database using JOSM. So I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold today, but hopefully that everyone can hear me just fine. So all of the satellite imagery that you'll be using to remotely map an OpenStreetMap most of the imagery was collected by satellites, right? You can collect some from aerial platforms, drones, and other sorts, but satellites are the most common. And let me see, I've got something on my screen. Can I get rid of that? There we go. Through a remote process called remote sensing. So remote sensing is the process of detecting and monitoring physical characteristics without actually being there in person. So just some of the platforms that we've talked about that I was just showing. So the remote sensing versus in situ. In situ is like when you're there on the ground in person observing something. So this is an example. On the left, you have an aerial platform satellite image of the National Monument in Washington, D.C. And then the picture on the right was in situ. So you're there on the ground actually looking at the object, right? You can positively identify characteristics of that feature, both from above and from the ground. Many times you can pick up on additional characteristics depending on which, if you're looking at it through remotely sensed data or if you're on the ground, and they tend to complement one another fairly well. So lots of times you'll maybe do some remote mapping, and then you'll go out into the field and then add a lot of additional detail that you might not be able to pick up on just from the satellite image alone. What's going on here? Okay. So there's some physical variables to remotely sensed data that are important to take into consideration. Possibly one of the most important is the spatial component. So that's like the amount of detail that you're going to have in that image, right? You can see through these examples here on the screen, you know, high resolution satellite imagery is typically something that's like less than 1 meter. So that means every 1 meter, 1 by 1 meter on the ground has data in it. And then when you combine all those together, right, you get your image, basically the pixel size. So that's really good for mapping in OpenStreetMap. So you can go and you can see buildings, you can see roadways, but it's not real good if you're trying to look at like the overall health of the agriculture crop in a particular country or a particular region, right? Because it's just way too much data, and it's not as useful. But for that specific intended purpose for digitizing, but it has other use cases that are, you know, areas where it would be better implemented. Temporal, or is basically the time, how often an image is taken, right? So it's a lot of before and after scenes. You know, some satellites will take a picture of the Earth every day. Some will take a picture of the Earth every 2 weeks. Some will take a picture of the Earth like on demand, you know, depending on, you know, when and where that situation is. You can see on the left here, this was a causeway in Florida. The road got damaged after a major hurricane went through there last year. So they were able to, you know, position and point their satellites to take a picture because they knew that this was something that they wanted an image of, versus some of these other examples where they're just on geosynchronous satellites that are constantly turning around and taking pictures of the Earth consistently, so you can do your before and after comparison. Spectral, these are the physical characteristics of the, basically think of it as the camera itself, right? What is visible? What energy does the camera pick up on that's visible to the human eye? Red, green, blue spectrum, right? It's anything between about 400 to about 700 nanometers is what humans can see. Some satellites have the ability to pick up on near infrared imagery, and then it can translate into the visible spectrum that humans can see. There's all kinds of other fancy sensors out there that can do shortwave infrared and kind of like look at the mineral composition of rocks and stuff. But for most intents and purposes, right, we're going to be, when you're mapping an OpenStreetMap, you're going to be focusing on the visible spectrum, so what you can actually see. Trying to check out the chats here. I'm not missing anything. If I am, just feel free to interrupt me. And then radiometric is the sensor's ability to pick up energy received in different numbers, and these are bits. This is a something that you don't necessarily get involved with as often as you would like the spectral, spatial, or temporal elements of satellite imagery, but it is important to know that radiometric is there, and that's like how finely tuned is that camera for picking up different energy for that particular area. I like that. Rory, like, I did create these slides, so I picked the lake chat example, you guys know. So this is where it gets really interesting here, the elements of imagery interpretation. It's basically like the way that your mind and your eyes and your perception of life and your life experiences all come together that will allow you to interpret what you're seeing and put it into some type of context that then you can put on the map, right? And these are, you know, just some examples here. to kind of get your brain and mind warmed up a little bit. You know, the picture on the left, you may have seen this before. Some people might immediately see two faces pointing at one another. Other folks might just see a face standing there, like, which is it? Picture, which is it? Is tough to tell. Is my internet cracking up, breaking up?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, let me know if it does. And then this image on the right, you know, there's not a complete triangle that's drawn there, but you can see the outline of one. And so we immediately think, as humans, there's a triangle, there's a missing triangle there that you can't actually see. I'm gonna turn off my camera, maybe. There we go. That should help. So when you're interpreting satellite imagery, one of the most important things to take into consideration is the location. You know, where are you, right? If we're in Tanzania, you're going to be using some of your local knowledge of the landscape of the country, and you're going to be taking that into consideration versus if you're, you know, say in the rainforest in Brazil, or maybe up in North Africa in the desert, right? You're going to just kind of take into consideration where you are and what you might be encountering. That's why it's always really helpful to map in areas that you're familiar with, because you have that local context and you can understand what you're looking at, and maybe some of the terms, you know, particularly with roadways and things that are used in those countries. Size is always, you know, very important thing to consider when you're mapping. You know, this feature here in the middle of the screen, we all know what that is, right? You can even see some people playing football out there, little specks of people. We all have a general idea of how big a football field is, right? You can even see the two goalposts here and here. And, you know, all things being equal, if this is an actual size, accurately sized football field, then you can use that as to help you gauge what other features are around, like how big is that building? It's really hard to gauge the size of a building without anything to compare it to. You know, cars, buses, those types of things, trucks, those are always pretty good things to use to help you gauge the size of, you know, the features that you're mapping. And that can also help you understand, you know, what those features are and what you might be looking at. Shape is really important too. Typically things in nature do not have very straight geometric lines and shapes. They do sometimes, but not very common. Usually when you have shapes like you're seeing here on the screen, very straight lines going from one direction to another, a lot of times that can indicate that it's some type of a man-made feature, not always, but if it is a man-made feature, right, then you can start calculating and classifying that in your brain. Okay, this is not made by nature, it's man-made, so what kind of feature could that be? Right, this is the Panama Canal in Central America, right? These are clearly made by man, not naturally occurring. Shadows are another really, really important element of satellite and imagery interpretation. This picture right here, it's kind of a little, I chose this one specifically because it's kind of gives you a little bit of an optical illusion. It's hard sort of to understand what you're looking at, but if you see right here, at the point of the shadow, that is actually the top of Mount Everest. All this is actually the shadow from the mountain itself, and the sun, right, is coming from the south, shining, so, you know, late in the day, so you're getting this shadow on the mountains behind. And that's always, you know, if you're looking at buildings in particular, look at where that roof line is, looking at where that shadow is. That really helps you differentiate one building from the other. If you're mapping a roadway, you know, and you see something on the side of the road, is it a ditch? Is it a embankment, right? Always look for that shadow. You won't necessarily get a shadow. A ditch won't, it will look like a shadow, or an embankment will actually give off a shadow because it's elevated above the ground. Tone and color, right? These could be dead giveaways sometimes of what you're actually looking at, right? This feature here, if you can't tell what that is, I'm sure everyone knows what this is, right? Golf course in the middle of a desert, right? You can tell right away when you're looking at this, like, that is not a naturally occurring, that is not naturally occurring. Something is making that green pop out of the middle of a desert, right? And if I could zoom out here, you would see this is literally in the middle of a desert right outside of Las Vegas. And right, looking at this a little bit closer, right? I don't know if there's any golfers, if anyone's ever been golfing. I don't golf myself, but you can tell here the blue on the image, right? We all know what that is. Water or ponds. Right? In order to get grass to grow in the middle of the desert, it requires water and lots of it. So they pump water out of the ground and they store it in these ponds here. It also gives a nice appearance, I guess, when you're golfing, water hazards. You can also see the different colors here along the fairways. The greener, the lighter green versus the darker green around, and then you have some of these sand traps, is what they're called, little sandy spots on the golf course that you don't want to hit your golf ball in. But you can, you know, easily identify these features from this image, just looking at the tone in color. Texture. Texture is also important. You know, vegetation, water, rivers, lakes. There's lots of different features, you know, sand dunes, right? They all have a specific texture that they're going to put off. This, you know, obviously is water outside a reef. And you can see out here, this is like the deeper ocean. The waves are a little bit bigger. You've got a reef right here that comes in. It gets a little shallower over here. You can tell because it's not as dark. And you can also see that these waves are not as big as the waves over here. So you're getting a nice transition, the shoreline. You can tell that from this image. You also have some of these darker striations. Most likely that's like currents moving along the shoreline there, where water is moving back and forth. All right. Patterns are particularly important when you are looking at vegetation, or when you are trying to, you know, identify specific like linear features, roads. These are just random patterns in the middle of the desert. So does it look like these were created by, does it look like these were naturally occurring? Or would you think that these were created by a person or people? It's kind of really tough to tell, honestly. This is in the Peruvian desert. These lines were actually created by people a very long time ago. They're called the Nazca lines. It's kind of like this famous myth that sort of not well understood why people created these lines in the desert 1,000 years ago, but they did, and they're still there today. And you can definitely see the pattern of these lines. They're very geometric and straight, drastically different from, some of the more natural occurring features that surround the desert, right? You can clearly tell that these are mountains and valleys and things going down. And then all the features here are very linear and straight, created by man. And then you can also see some patterns up here indicating that there's a river and some agriculture right up to the north of that scene. So height in depth, right? Probably one of the more important components when you're mapping in urban areas is understanding the height and depth of the features that you're mapping, right? Roadways, going over other roadways, right? There's bridges there, so you would be adding bridges in for some of those features. In certain cases, if you really got detailed, you could count the level of floors in, buildings and understand how tall some of these buildings are. Again, looking at the shadows, right, of these buildings. Sometimes it can be helpful if you're trying to determine the height of a building, but it can also be difficult trying to map features that are in those shadows. So one thing to always consider is looking at different satellite images. If you're mapping, if the project says use Bing, then you always want to use Bing, but that doesn't mean you can't look at another image of that area to try and help you determine what that feature is for mapping. It's very, very helpful to bring up a different image that was taken of the same area on a different day with a different sun angle. And maybe it has some different atmospheric interference or less or more so that gives it different coloring. It's been processed differently. Can definitely help broaden the spectrum of what it is that you're actually trying to map. Excuse me. Okay. Situation and association, right? This is kind of goes back to that first one a little bit with location. Where are you actually mapping? What is it you're looking at, right? There's a lot going on in this picture right here, but you can clearly see, if there's any guesses of where this is, I won't let you all guess, but you can put it in the chat if anyone wants to guess where they think this is. Just trying to figure out what's going on. Obviously, there are lots of very big boats out here, very, very big boats. Swimming pool, right? This is a nice little protected harbor. You can tell because of these jetties or bulkheads that go out on the side. So your boats park in here. Swimming pool, maybe you park your boat and you come go for a swim or something, and then there's this big city, lots of shadows being cast going down. So obviously you can kind of determine there's some type of a hill that's going up here. And this is Monaco. But knowing that you're mapping in Monaco, or can help you kind of get a sense of what some of these features are. And they do a Grand Prix race here as well. So if you look closely at some of the roadways around Monaco, you'll see that they have different markings on them that are used for that race. And yep, those are the elements of remote sensing. Let's see. I think things to take into consideration. Try and there we go. Sorry, I'm trying to turn my video on here. When you're mapping, make sure you try and take all of those things into consideration. Really think about what you're looking at. Ask yourself questions. Try and answer those questions. ask the person sitting next to you, if there is someone sitting next to you, to take a look at it. Hey, what do you think this is? What does this look like to you, right? Get the conversation going with someone else or with yourself, and then that'll really help you improve your mapping, positively identify those features, and then, you know, make it to where you're creating the best map data possible. Thanks. Questions? Where is Rory Lake? That's a question.
Oh, that's a trivia question. Someone will have to find it.
It looks like it's in Minnesota,
You have to find it.
upstate New York.
Someone can find it by the next event and get a sticker.
No questions. Which characteristics differentiate one body and another in receiving energy? So this gets into like the physics of sensor technology. Stella, like, but basically, and it's like the reflective energy that things put off. So if I can answer this correctly, when you're creating the sensor, when someone builds a sensor, right, take the camera on your smartphone, the energy that can be received into that sensor is automatically built in from the physical characteristics of that, right? So my camera can only take pictures and display things in the visible spectrum. That's how the camera was made. Some cameras, you know, have like LiDAR, right? So it can pick up on all these point clouds and build 3D models. That's built into the characteristics of the camera. You know, like I was saying earlier, some have, you know, they can see in the visible spectrum. X-rays is another, right? All an X-ray is a camera. You go to get your arm X-rayed or something, that can kind of see through your body, and it picks up that energy that is looking at, you know, hey, is this bone broken or not, whatever. So those characteristics are built into the sensor itself or camera itself. Hopefully that answered your question. Yep, I could definitely share that PowerPoint.
Hey, Chad,
Yes.
if you want to send it to me, I'll drop it into the folder that they already have the link to. That way
Okay.
you don't have to worry about sending a new Google Drive link.
Sure.
Yeah, it'd be easier. I think it's easier for you if we just keep it in that repository.
I'm just going to share it with you right now, Brent.
Perfect. So
You-
everybody, I'll put Chad's presentation in the same folder where the JOSM presentation is, which is module 3. So if you want to go and dig that out, it is in that earlier link up chat. And then module 3 is where I'll put it. And I have Chad's link.
Awesome. Thanks,
And I'm
Brent.
going to download it and I'm going to put it into that file.
Okay. Any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Dr. Makaska. And we're just a little bit at the top of the hour. And thank you all for keeping around. Just to re-echo some of the points through this engagement is that this is our first day of engagement. We've had this brief enriching introduction about most of the tools and how we are going to engage during the weeks doing our work. We will continue to coordinate on our different medium of communication as we have been with Eric, with Shaban, the entire team. Yeah, so please make sure you keep close contact with everyone and find out, make sure you get a daily update on what's happening. We'll be doing the mapathons or the mapping exercises throughout the week as the tasks come along. We're going to share the material. Dr. Makaska has already shared the drive, the Google Drive, where you can find and download the material. And we'll also be emailing that as well to all of us that have attended today. And yeah, my encouragement is to keep sharing and also supporting our colleagues who have just an introductory moment that I've just encountered or have just got to be part of the entire YouthMappers community. Let's encourage them, let's support them with the materials that they need to practice. Next week, same time, Saturday again, we will have a little bit of a switch up where we're going to have other youth mappers from other different youth mapping universities outside of Tanzania, and those that have tremendously contributed to the overall growth of the Youth Mappers movement come and share their amazing stories, their project progress that align with the kind of project that we are going to do. And our hope is that it inspires your innovation mindset. And then it also encourages you to dig deep into most of the project work that we're doing so that you're able to make a meaningful contribution to the overall project. I wonder if there is any extra comments, Dr. Makaska, Chad, Rory, Christine.
I think I just want to encourage everyone to join us again, to let us know how you're progressing and to let us know if you have any questions. Again, for some of you, this might be introductory, but you can then become the trainer. YouthMappers very much believes in a train the trainer approach because that empowers the chapters to be self-sufficient and not always reliant on us from the coordinating body. So please reach out if you have questions. If these are seeming to be information that you already know, then that's great. It means you're now a trainer and you can take all of our material and train people who aren't as familiar in all of these things that we cover. So we just want to encourage you to, it's through practice and through teaching that you learn yourself. So we just want to encourage that and support that through distribution of our free materials. So let us know if you have any questions on that.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So I believe you all will have a wonderful weekend now on, and we hope that the material that we're sharing or the presentations that we've had today are enriching for our knowledge. Have a blessed afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
hope to see you all again next Saturday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.